Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again it's time for the Texas Gun Vault Poll Question of the Week, a weekly vlog that I put out where I ask you as my viewers and subscribers about something that deals with guns, gun politics, current events and news, or something fun like EDC that I want to get your thoughts and opinions on. And this week's question deals with something that I think could be very profound and far-reaching in the Second Amendment community, especially in the interpretation of firearms law in the lower federal courts for generations to come. And that is the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the bump stock case. That really surprised me because many times the Supreme Court does not take up cases like this that could be construed as controversial. However, the lower courts have been playing games like the 7th Circuit and the 9th Circuit, and they've been reinterpreting the Heller and the Bruin decisions in very creative ways. And I think some justices on the Supreme Court are tired of it. They also want to rein in this endless rulemaking by the ATF, saying, well, we feel this way, we're going to create a rule about it, even though a clear reading of the statute and a clear reading of the law says they can't do it. Of course, the lower courts wanting to possibly get invited to the cocktail parties. These judges are going, yeah, we're going to uphold these very anti-gun things because one day I want to be elevated to the Supreme Court. And if I rule in an anti-gun way, well, a Democrat president will nominate me. That's what I honestly think is happening. But the Supreme Court, I think, has had enough of it. They took up this case, which means at least 4 justices in conference said, we need to review this. Now, it can go pro-Second Amendment, can go anti-Second Amendment, and the rulings can always be narrow or broad. And that's why I wanted to see what you guys thought was going to happen. What is this ruling going to be? And how broad is it going to be? Because if it's pro-Second Amendment and very broad, as I mentioned, it could have very profound implications for generations to come. But let's dive right into this week's poll, and then we'll get your results and see what you guys think. This past week, we learned of the exciting news that the Supreme Court of the United States was accepting yet another Second Amendment case. What is even more interesting is that this case, Garland v. Cargill, deals with bump stocks and potentially the rulemaking powers and interpretation of statutes by agencies such as the ATF. While every case the court takes can have narrow or broad implications, it seems as though the latest Second Amendment cases have been typically decided on landmark terms. With what we know so far about this case, regardless of the outcome, do you feel this will be another case that will redefine the Second Amendment for generations and be similar in scope to the Bruin opinion, or do you feel it will be narrow and only deal with the specific aspects of the case? Please remember to vote what you think will happen and not what you want to happen. And as I have mentioned, just because you want a particular outcome and you hope a certain outcome doesn't actually mean that realistically that's what's going to happen. I don't want to let people down and say, it's going to be a broad ruling, it's going to be so pro-Second Amendment, and then when it doesn't happen, people are sad and disappointed. Just because you want something to happen and voting for that on a poll doesn't actually influence the outcome in any way. So I'm asking you guys to use your rational thought and not your emotional thought on what's actually going to happen. So let's go through each one of these. Let's see what you guys voted for, and then I'll give you guys my personal opinions. With only 83 votes this week, which kind of surprised me because I think this is huge news, we have the ruling will be pro-2A and be very broad in scope, 36%. The ruling will be pro-2A but narrowly tailored to bump stocks, 42%. The ruling will be anti-2A and be very broad in scope, 7%. The ruling will be anti-2A but narrowly tailored to bump stocks, 8%. And something else, explain in the comments, 6%. Now, I do have to agree with the sentiment of many of you that voted, and that this is probably going to be a very pro-Second Amendment outcome, because I don't see this court voting anti-gun in any of these cases. However, how broad will it be? And that's the true question that is before the court. Are they going to tell the ATF, hey, your rulemaking is getting out of control. You are trying to ban things and regulate things that Congress did not specifically tell you that you can. And just because something happens, you have to do something. Well, that is not reason enough. We live in a world, in a nation of laws. You just can't make up stuff willy-nilly. And that, of course, is what I hope is going to be the outcome. But realistically, are these judges going to be more level-headed to just say, well, this is just about bump stocks, a clear reading of the statute said this is a machine gun, this doesn't meet that, Congress will have to ban them. And of course, if that's the outcome, we might have a Congress that is going to ban those. They'll go, well, the Supreme Court said we have to if we want to ban them. And that will give them the motivation to do so, which of course means more anti-gun legislation could be passed in the long term. But let's break down each one of these, and I'll give you guys my personal thoughts and opinions. First, we have the ruling will be pro 2A and be very broad in scope. And of course, this is the way most people are going to want them to vote. And actually, based off of what I can tell and these justices and how the lower courts are pretty much flying in the face of the Supreme Court, I actually think this is going to be the outcome. I am hoping beyond anything else that Justice Thomas is going to author this opinion, because I honestly think he has had enough with the Ninth Circuit and the Seventh Circuit and all of the games that they play, changing things from dangerous and unusual to dangerous or unusual, and playing word games with all of their opinions. It's getting out of control because they're somehow taking the Heller and Bruin cases and justifying every possible gun law and gun ban that legislators at the state level or agencies like the ATF can come up with. And it's time to put a stop to it. If Congress wants to ban something, they need to do it instead of allowing these agencies to do it, and these state legislatures cannot usurp federal authority. So actually, that's the one that I would have voted for, not because it's what I hope will happen, but it's because it's what I honestly think will happen. I just think the court is tired of the gamesmanship of the lower courts. Then we have the ruling would be pro 2A, but narrowly tailored to bump stocks. Now, one of the predictions that I have is that you are going to see a pro-Second Amendment concurring opinion that is going to be much narrowly tailored. I have a feeling you're going to see Justice Barrett or Justice Roberts pen a pro-Second Amendment ruling, as I said, but say this case should really only be decided on the very specific merits. Is a bump stock a machine gun? And that's because they know if they change all of the interpretation and Chevron deference that these agencies have, well, that's going to upend this whole fourth branch of government that we call it, the bureaucratic state. And many times I have discovered that Justice Roberts really doesn't want to rock the boat too much. So I actually see a concurring opinion. While I don't think it will be the majority opinion, it's definitely going to be a concurring opinion. And I feel like it is going to be pro-Second Amendment no matter what, but you might see even a split among the conservative justices. Then we have the ruling will be anti-2A and be very broad in scope. And very surprising, that got 7%, a lot more votes than I thought it would. I think the Supreme Court has proven to us that they are very pro-Second Amendment, considering that it is a 6-3 conservative, I'll put that in air quotes, conservative majority. I just don't see that happening, especially with a broad ruling saying, well, these agencies have broad authority to ban whatever they want. Then we have the ruling will be anti-2A, but narrowly tailored to bump stocks, 8%. If it is going to go anti-2A, this is the way that it probably would go. And just say in the case of this, a bump stock is too close to a machine gun because it can simulate the same rapid fire. It's in the spirit of the law. Okay, the ATF can do it. But I really believe that the conservative justices are way more about following the way the law is written and not an interpretation of that law. And then we have something else explained in the comments, 6%. So that's what I think about all of this and how you guys voted. But now let's go to the top rated comments and see what you guys are thinking and if you guys have any other insights. With our top rated comment of the week, we have Brian Edgett 2134 who said, I'm thinking that the ruling will be more on the way it was put in place. So I guess I'm going to interpret that comment that they're going to uphold it just because they have to, because it deals with rapid firing guns and they have to do something. That is definitely a possibility. I personally do not think that the conservative justices would vote that way, however. Then we have Herf Money who said, it will probably be 5-4, but a very tailored ruling. And that is a huge possibility because we know that possibly Barrett and Roberts aren't the staunchest Second Amendment supporters out there. That's why I said I think there could be a concurring opinion. Then we have Derek 3154 who said, I think this will not even be about bump stocks, just the abuse of Chevron deference to set the tone for these three-letter agencies to go through Congress if you want things changed. They simply don't have the power to change definitions that have criminal penalties, especially with the rule of lenity. Yes, and Derek is 100% right. The rule of lenity is so important that you can't have agencies changing rules and definitions and statutes that have criminal penalties applied. And courts are supposed to interpret that on the side of the people and not the government when there are criminal penalties involved. And I think that might be the perfect case to attack this Chevron deference. I think that is an outstanding comment. Then we have Rufus Rizzo, 78, who said, I feel like the results of this poll so far are 50-50 that it will be broad or just bump stocks. Based on the past, it seems the Supreme Court will rule broadly. I'm surprised the EPA case hasn't factored into several of these ATF rule changes cases. Maybe the court will write that into the decision. And I completely agree. These agencies are getting out of control. But if I was still a betting man, I still think because of history and who's on the court, I think we will see a broad ruling. Not because that's what I want, because it definitely is, just because we're looking at history. And then finally, we have Stickfighter1038 who says, do think it will be ruling that will rein in the ATF's ability to reinterpret, change Congress passed laws. Don't think it will be broad enough to discourage the use of ATF to change the rules and make new law. And I completely agree, because as we see from the lower courts, the Supreme Court can say, you need to adjudicate Second Amendment cases this way. And what do the lower courts do? Well, we're going to be clever and sneaky and change the interpretation of words. Yeah, I think they will never stop. But I have to think that because of the history of what these lower courts and these agencies have done, in light of the Bruen and Heller decisions, I really think that Justice Thomas is going to do his very best and try to put in some type of ruling that will put the kibosh on a lot of this, at least for the short term. So that's what I think about this. That's what you guys think. And I can't wait as time gets closer to find out what actually happens. Because as I said, I think this might be the most profound Second Amendment case we have in our generation. Bigger than Bruen, bigger than Heller, because right now the battle for the Second Amendment is in the lower courts and it's with the three-letter agencies. And if we can put a stop to all the madness that's going on down there, I think our Second Amendment might be in strong shape for many generations to come. So, that's the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week, and as I said, I can't wait to see the outcome. And if you guys would like to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab of my YouTube channel. I always post a link in the comments as well. Please go over there, see what the next poll is about. Make sure you vote, comment, and like other people's comments so we can get the top-rated comments of the week. So tell me in this video's comments, are you excited about this possibility? Because I really think this could be the biggest Second Amendment case in our lifetime. I'd love to know your thoughts. So, as always, thanks for watching.